please help me give a big round of applause to Matthew Reaney, who is going to be doing a talk to HCI functions.
All right, folks, I'm going to be doing a bit of walking around during this. I don't want to be restrained to the pulpit. But for everybody in the audience, if I can just ask that you remain seated for the rest of the talk. So today I'm going to be talking about my work from the first year, my PhD. This is a very creative title, but you'll see the real technical, academic, boring title later. So a little about me. So I've just gone into my second year in my PhD. I'm part of the Cyber AI Hub for CSIT over in the newly rebranded Queen's Titanic Quarter building. Here's my supervisors. These people make sure I don't do stuff that's too silly. And my other interests, I'm part of the Robotics Society. So this is our, if you've seen Grant's BattleBots downstairs, we have a few of our own. We have a very creative naming scheme where we just name them John and then put a number. So the other two Johns are no longer with us. This one's barely hanging on. And I also help out with Capture the Flag quite a bit. We're trying to get trained up. We're terrible. I don't think any of us did anywhere in the top 10 for the, maybe Mark, who's in the audience, got top 10 for the NIDC CTF, B-sides, CTF. So I'll go on to a bit of an agenda here. So I'm going to start with the problem, and then I'll move on to the testbed that I'm using. Then the AI. Does it work? Some results in this part. Give you a wee bit of takeaways, and hopefully with time permitting, some questions, although I won't blame you if you all run out for lunch. Starting off with the problem. So this is my big boring title. So it's using reinforcement learning to prepare cyber attack responses for cyber physical systems. The long and short of this is I'm trying to create an autonomous response system. So at the moment, there's a lot of good things in the world of detection, especially automated. We can find threats and we can detect threats a lot of the time, but the automation steps that come after that are often a lot more limited. So that's where I'm trying to make my name. So why am I using AI for this task? So it's network security to begin with that I'm sort of tackling here, and modern networks are very large. If you think we could all be connected to the same Wi-Fi today, and then also we have people constantly connecting and disconnecting from networks, so they're very dynamic. So for a lot of the traditional techniques that would try and create a big model for all of this, it would take a lot of computing resources. And if the network changed every time, the model would also need to change every time. And it leads to a lot of problems if you try and do like one-to-one mappings and stuff like that. So the AI part is essentially to help us generalize. So no matter the structure of the network or the size of the network, we can hopefully do something about it. So why am I using cyber physical systems or aircraft? So cyber physical systems really describe anything that is like a kind of like mechanical or a process that's also electronic in a way, like power plants, factories, or autonomous vehicles, or things like aircraft. Anything with a sensor really can be a cyber physical system. And I've chosen aircraft in particular. So one of the reasons that I've chosen this type of network and this system is the response to this is very time sensitive, and also the critical failure states are often have big threat to human life. If we think about like an enterprise network, someone comes in, steals your data. Once your data's gone, it doesn't matter too fast how much you plug that leak. It's already gone, and that's probably oversimplifying it, but it's also not going to immediately cause like another knock-on effect if your data is being taken in a lot of the cases. However, if someone comes in and they muck with something on an airplane, you obviously are at great threat if you're on that airplane and you want to rectify that as soon as possible so that you stay on the airplane. So I also worked alongside Rolls-Royce for a lot of this work, which was very interesting as part of their research network. So they helped inform a lot of what I might find in an aircraft engine sort of network, which helped give me some credibility. So moving on to the testbed. So this is the sort of environment testbed that I am representing. So we have a few core components in the middle of the aircraft network that, Rolls-Royce very kindly were like, these would be in there. So we've got going sort of starting in the middle and arcing up. We've first got the sort of management, which is like a historian or a health monitoring system. So it'll basically get a copy of a lot of the sensor data, and then it'll be sending it off as sort of a routine to make sure everything's okay. And it'll be archiving all this information as well, so that when they come to look at doing repairs and things later on, they can access this wealth of information to see if there's been any problems reported. This is connecting onto a system called the auto throttle, and this is really the brains of the computer. So the pilot basically goes, I would like to cruise over there, and this does all the maths. So it takes all the different endpoints and combines it together and says, right, if you want to get to that airspeed, this is my current airspeed, does the calculations and figures out what changes need to occur. And this is then passed to the FADEC, which stands for Full Authority Digital Engine Control. So this actually then tells the engine to do those changes. So this interfaces with the physical process, and it would also have a lot of sensors and things connected to it. We also then, on this side, we have our adversary, and they're connecting in via some sort of external link. That could be maybe there's an exposed network via the Wi-Fi on the plane, or the satellite link, or the ground link that the planes might have. And for us, that's like a Kali Linux attacker. And all of these systems are represented by Linux nodes, some running particular software to emulate PLCs. And on the other side, we have the detection system, which is monitoring everything that's going on here. And I'm using a sort of enterprise set of tools for running those detections to sort of say, if we can take an existing detection system, we can then attach our thing right onto it. So this is what it actually looks like when we put it in our software that we're using called GNS3. It's a whole load of different Linux devices connected in together. We've got routers running router software. We've got different Linux distributions, things running PLC things. But it all runs in real time, and you can log in like you would with any Linux system and access all of these. That's really good because it makes a lot of the information that these generate, or when they're talking to each other, it is realistic, essentially, as realistic as you can get with an emulator. As opposed to like simulation, you might lose a lot of that detail. Running in real time does have its problems though, especially when you want to run lots and lots and lots of this. It takes a very long time. Moving on to the attack chain, so if there's any cybersecurity people, they'll be really excited for this bit. The thing we're trying to protect, the critical process, is this connection between the FADEC, which controls the engine, and the auto throttle, which is the big calculator, and the adversary needs to sever that connection. So it's an 8-stage sort of attack chain at the moment. So the first one they're doing is scanning the sort of network on the outside. So all these bits where there's sort of dotted lines is a network segmentation. So they're going to access this router, and then they're going to do some sort of password crack to get in there and look around and see what rules and things are in place, and then perhaps glean more information if they're blocking particular IPs, and they're going to try and remove these. They're going to move on to the next section, which is scanning the internal network, and they're going to discover a lot more of these devices. and then they're going to run a backdoor to get into the management using a CVE, and then they're going to want to privilege escalate so that they can reach the auto throttle system, and then they're going to be performing another CVE there, which denial of services, and as you can see, it's not gonna end well for us there. So we've got the scenario all laid out, and we've got a test bed that performs that for us. We now need to actually protect it with some AI. So I'm using reinforcement learning. I am using deep reinforcement learning, but I'm going to start with this one. So we set an overall objective, like most AI, and we say we'd like you to do that. So they're going to maintain normal operation of the network and thrust value communication. That mic died. It's not maintaining normal operation. As you can see in this objective, we don't actually define stop the attacker, but the attacker in itself is going to disrupt the normal operation. So you'll see later on some examples where we maybe started with something a bit more like stop the attacker, and it did do that, but it also didn't keep the normal operation. When you're talking about a cyber physical system like the aircraft, you realize that you want to keep it running. So moving on from the operation, we have the environment, which is the testbed thing we just spent ages talking about. So I won't go over that. Hopefully you've not forgotten it yet. Then we basically look at this testbed and we take out a number of observations. So the information that we can take out of that environment is the states, and as a collective, they become the state space. And we then essentially evaluate the states. We've got another microphone. Excellent, so I can go over this side. The reward helps us sort of achieve this objective at the top. And we want to sort of manually shape those to push the behavior of where we want the AI to go. This is a bit different from a lot of the more classical AI approaches. Say classical, they're still all very new, but something like classification, you're kind of just setting these objective as like a binary task, or it's correct or incorrect. For us, it's a bit more complicated compared to something like a classifier. So these almost work like hyperparameters in a way. The agent in our scenario is the sort of blue team, or the cybersecurity guy, the good guy, and he can take actions, which is sort of threat responses. So these can be turning various devices off, also turning them back on. He can set up firewalls, he can reset processes. There's 30 for him to choose from. The reason we give him so many is so that we can say he's learned to take good ones, so we also include bad ones. They're not really bad, and we tried that, and it would sometimes pick them and be not good. So there's certain responses that we know as a designer it should never be taking, so those aren't included. Putting it all together, this is sort of my flagship diagram. So this is where the deep neural network part comes in. So when I was talking about that state space thing, they're very large, so that's why you need to use a neural network, because it's sort of not computationally possible with regular methods to look at this entire space. So we generalize that using deep reinforcement learning. So we have the environment that we talked about, we have the attack chain. They come through here as observations, as states. We assess them with our reward. We pass this into our neural network, and then it comes out with an action that hopefully helps the policy, which is the thing that sort of connects it to the objective. And then it will perform that action back into the environment. So this actually influences the training set while it's training. So that's why we have to have a big test bed. We can't have a static data set. We have to have a live system, because we can essentially change what the data set is, midway through it. The algorithm we're using for the deep neural network is a PPO, just for anybody wondering. That was a question last time. So does it work? First of all, we need to outline how do we evaluate it. I talked about more classical classification problems. They have a great suite of metrics like accuracy or F1 score that a lot of people can agree on, that you can sort of get a really good concrete answer if it works or not. We don't have any of those. We have to go off of the reward that we sort of determine ourselves based on the scenario. But there is a general pattern that you want to see with reward. So it should start off fairly low when the AI has no idea what it's doing and is essentially picking random actions. This is the exploration stage, which is the start of that graph. It'll eventually figure out what's going on, and it'll learn to get a higher reward, and it'll sort of consistently form that strategy for the given scenario, and then it'll plateau. That, in an ideal world, is what we want to see, is something like this. We can also then look at other information sources other than the reward. The reward does sort of encapsulate the entire health of the objective, but we can look deeper into our states. So one of our states is security alerts. So we can, look from a fairly baseline, knowledge. If there's more alerts, that is bad. It's the same with attack stage. If the attacker gets further, that is bad. Node status is kind of, are the computers turned on? In our case, if the computers are turned off, that is bad. We curveball in there. So, if the computers are turned on, that is good. So we can make other evaluations. Lastly, we can also look at the actions taken to kind of form what the behavior or the thinking to try and help the explainability of what the AI is doing. So I'll move on to some examples. Back in February, many, many months ago, it feels like a lifetime ago, this is our first example. So we're starting off, as you can see, this period at the start, it's exploring what to do, and then it eventually sort of plateaus. And just to increase my credibility, there's a massive anomaly in this, and you'll see it throughout them, but that's because I'm not fudging my numbers here. So we can move on and say the alert or the reward looks pretty good. It looks weirdly not too curvy, but it gets to the general idea. And we can look at something else, say, what about our alerts? Have they decreased? And we can see, oh, there's a few alerts at the start, and then it seems to be stopping, other than that anomaly. It really pains me when I look at these. I would love to change that, but can't. It all seems good so far. Lots of reward, very few alerts. We then look on to the next set and we go, oh, the attack stage isn't changing. It's not getting stopped. That's not good. So if we look at our behavior here, we're saying, what is it actually doing? Oh, it's blocking the connection to the security node. So, it's basically cutting off over here. So I always describe this as in the result of a fire, it's turned off the fire alarm. Not a good start. So that was sort of back to that, the normal operation of the network. It didn't hold. So we move on to April time. I've had a bit more time to tune this up, figure things out. Here we're seeing the reward again, very, very bumpy, but it's starting off lower and then it's climbing higher. I'm going, okay, that looks good. We're going to check the attack stage this time rather than trusting the alerts. Okay, it's starting off and then it's sort of stopping. We've got, if it's a negative value, it means that it got to that one and then it stopped it. So especially towards the end, sort of 80 plus, we're saying, okay, it's consistently stopping it there. That's good. It's maybe taking a wee bit longer to train than the last one, but it appears to have gotten there. So what is it doing? We can look at more states and we can go, oh, so we're looking at our nodes up. So do you remember I said nodes up is good thing if they're up, and we're seeing a decrease, which is bad. So it's turned off the management server. So this here's been switched off. So you know, it has done something bad, but it has actually stopped the attacker because it is in the path of the attack chain. So we're going, okay, it's getting there. It's getting there. It's still, I would not like that to be switched off. But we move on to the next one, which is in May time. And we're seeing, okay, here's the reward again. You've seen these many times. It's sort of very bumpy, but it's sort of forming some sort of higher plateau there. Where you can look at the attack stage and we say, okay, it was getting some at the start there and it seems to be negative all the way down there. So it's stopping the attack. And we can move on to the mean nodes up and we can say, okay, it's not turning anything off this time. That's good. Just at the start when it's learning. And we can see action taken, it's resetting the router to the external network. So we can say, okay, it's cutting it off here this time. So by taking that action and by resetting that router, it restores all of the original settings on that router. So it's essentially putting the firewalls back up to keep the attacker out. So that's pretty good. So these were sort of the results from my preliminary publication to say we got it to work. So I hope I have walked you through how I sort of created the testbed, how I trained the AI to defend and the many iterations that it took. A lot of the different future work things. One of the main things is I want to make those graphs not so bumpy. They're very volatile at the minute, but that's actually a good thing. It seems weird and looks messy, but it means that the system is able to train even though there's weird activity going on. Who in this room has used a computer and every time you turn it on, it works exactly the same as the last time you turned it on? No hands. So you see the point. We need to have the network varying every single time, which is why they're bumpy. But we want to understand why it's so bumpy and if we can make it less bumpy or more bumpy. So that's what I'm looking at the moment. Before I go on to questions, I'm going to shout out two of my colleagues would be the right term. I would use friends, Mark and Ryan. They are also in my PhD cohort and they will be presenting later on today. I have seen both of their talks. I will be going again. So definitely check those out. Question time. Before we do that, I'll just say if you want to get in touch with me, there's my email. You can find me on LinkedIn. I've got a link tree. If you're desperate to read more and you can't even wait to talk to me afterwards at the lunch, my paper is available online. You can go and download it right now. And I'm not saying you have to do that, but it would be excellent because it increases the numbers. Questions then? Well, if I have any. There's one hand raising. That's good. We get at least one in. Make it easy, please.
Can you tell us more about how you represent the reward? The reward that I'm assuming it had a relationship with. Like how you represent the operation of the
Yep. I have so much in my appendix. This is in the paper, but I have my detail on my reward function here. We are using a sort of negatively penalized reward. From previous work, they were like, this works better. So I said, okay, I'm going to do that too. We start off with a given value, and that's sort of the maximum it can ever attain. And from that, it then gets penalized. So we look at all these different we have all the different states and each of them has a multiplier connected to it. So I basically turn these like dials sort of up and down to say, okay, the penalty for the alerts needs to be higher or it needs to be lower. Yeah, those all correspond to a particular state and we basically tune those. But the reward mainly helps speed up the learning process. The end weights that the AI will learn to use itself will sort of be a separate version of these, which is its policy that we, because it's AI, can't actually see. It's all, black box. So if that answers your question.
Yeah.
Oh.
This may be a stupid question, so I apologize before I ask it. When I was looking at the diagram that you had, showing the chain from the attacker through to OSSEC, at the side, you've a lot of different parts of the system there, including the FADEC.
Yep.
And one of the questions I had was just about the volume of data. You imagine getting through this whenever you're trying to monitor the system. So where you've got the external network, the management, the historian, auditor, everything, I guess, from the FADEC involves systems on the aircraft itself.
Yep.
So I'm assuming it's a massive volume of data that this would be processing over in practice down the line.
Yeah.
Testbed now.
Yeah. No. Yeah, there will be a lot of different endpoints in there. So at the moment we're just doing thrust value, so that's like one number. So we do plan to expand this to doing like a couple of those. So that's kind of like the OT side of it, and that's definitely something for future work that we want to look into, because it's a real thing at the moment in the literature. Is like, how many information feeds can we give it before it falls over? I've already done that, where I gave it like 8 more than it already had, and it just didn't do anything in a small amount of time. So that's definitely an area of concern.
So just on that basis, I was just wondering, where do you see the compute running for the DNN in the graph that you have there? Like, where does it kind of slot into that? Sorry, the compute for your DNN, where do you see it slotting into the picture that you have there?
I would basically see this engine one here. I would see that getting expanded, and it would be a bit more complicated in there. It might even be a separate subnet on there. And one of the reasons that we want to increase this as well is it'll allow us to have multiple different ways the attacker can go through. So we can actually have an attacker that, although most of the attack is similar, its final destination can be a choice of different endpoints. It could just choose to go after one sensor or a combination. So that's where it would go.
Great. Thanks. Fantastic talk, by the way.
I was just wondering how long it takes to do these simulations, because you were jumping by month there, and it looks like if it was only one day, you're only working one day a month.
There's many sets of results. So each run can take, so it does 100 episodes. So each episode is about 3 minutes. So you've got about a minute to spin all the computers up from their sort of snapshotted state. And then the actual attack bit runs. I think the attack takes about a minute to 90 seconds. And that's sort of the time there. And it normally cuts it at about a maximum of 2 minutes for that bit. So 3 minutes. Do that 100 times. There's other computing problems. So it's about 6 or 7 hours for 100. And we had to then do tests where we ran, if it takes it longer to learn, you have to expand that amount of time. So we had ones that were trying to do about, the longest we tried to run, it was 250 episodes, and that was like leave it running for a day and come back to it. So it was like a full day cycle before we could look at any of the results. So that's quite a difficult point of it. It's like you want to tune one of those things, 6 hours, change one number, 6 hours. So definitely, that's, if that helps answer that.
And so would you need really good hardware on the plane that was analysing this? And
so majority of the compute power for me is actually running all of the VMs, because it's all being hosted on one computer. So the VMs are like so RAM intensive to run, 9 VMs all at one time. And they're VMs within another VM. So I have like VM inception, and that's where all the processing power. So I think once the model's trained, you could potentially say on the edge, you could deploy your model potentially on a plane. It's all very early days.
Cool, thanks.
Oh, we've got one more.
Do you? I know it's still early days, still working things out. And that's great. But do you eventually see sort of stability in your model's response to a given attack? So you obviously showed some of the different things there, potential kinds of failure states you can end up in.
Yeah.
Do you see that then eventually for a variety of attacks, you get a stable response from the model, or is that still something that you're working through?
So we only have one attack chain at the moment. So that's something that I was sort of saying, if we add more surfaces, we can add more attacks. basically everybody in the literature only uses one attack at the moment. That's where the real difficulty is going to come in. But you have a real problem from a designer perspective of trying to build you need to build a system that you make vulnerable to multiple attacks, which can be very difficult from that point of view. But the hope is that a lot of the information that this is taking in is not specific to that one attack. So if another attacker came in and did something different, it would hopefully still flag alerts, and then changes on the nodes would still occur. So it's hopefully generalized enough that it's saying, right, there's a security event here. It doesn't necessarily care too much at the moment what that security event is. It's basically just counting, is there security events?
Cool. Yeah, thank you.
How common are these kind of attacks at the moment that you're aware of?
I don't think there's been any that have been fairly severe or anything like that. There's a couple that I mentioned in my sort of motivation that were to do with, I think there was a malware found in an air traffic control, which would be the thing talking to the aircraft. I believe that was found, and there was somebody basically did a study on kind of like on a aircraft type thing to try and find threats themselves. It wasn't like an attacker had gone in and then they reported on after. It's definitely mentioned in the paper. I just off the top of my head can't give it, but there's no one's took a plane out as far as we know with a cyber attack.
Thank you.
All right.